Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this wonderful session hosted by the Australian Academy of Technology and Engineering on changing climates, equality today for a sustainable tomorrow in celebration of International Women's Day. And happy International Women's Day to you all. From wherever you are around Australia, I hope you have a wonderful day. We've got some great speakers here for the session this afternoon, which I'm sure you're going to enjoy. But as we gather here first, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands from which we meet, as we are all from different places around Australia. I'm joining you from Sydney in the lands of the Gurungal people of the Eora Nation. I pay my respects to the elders past and present, and to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who join us online today. As we share and discuss our own knowledge and practices, we acknowledge the deep knowledge forever embedded in the custodianship of our country. Now, a few housekeeping messages. Firstly, this panel discussion is being recorded and will be published in the Academy's YouTube channel. And we hope to distribute it to schools who are participating in the Academy's programs for mentoring, computing in schools, and so on. Should you have any questions during the webinar, please use the Q&A button found in the lower part of the Zoom screen. And we also include you to upvote any questions by liking them as well. If we will try and cover as many questions as possible during the Q&A session. We'd love this to be very interactive and to hear your views, so please don't be silent about it. Now, just a bit of background on the Academy's STELR, IMNIS, and CS in School programs. These programs, this program is going directly to secondary school classrooms to enable students to hear from professional women engineers and scientists to discuss how they break the bias in communities, workplaces, and in fields of science, technology, engineering, and maths. I hope this session gives you an interactive and live opportunity to hear from these leading women and to understand some of the opportunities and pathways that are available for these careers. So now to the start of the program, and it gives me great pleasure, firstly, to introduce Dr. Samantha Papasvilu. She is the Service Review and Redesign Project Manager and Data Analyst at the Australian Taxation Office. Samantha completed a PhD specializing in digital transformation and adoption in the Australian public sector. She also holds a Bachelor of Psychological Science and a Bachelor of Social Science from the University of Adelaide, and has completed a Master of Project Management and Systems and a Master of International Trade and Development, all from the University of Adelaide. Her work at the Australian Taxation Office involves focusing on service redesign and digital transformation. Samantha also teaches at the University of Adelaide, focusing on postgraduate project management, system design, and research methods. Her key field of research is understanding digital adoption behaviors in the Australian public sector. So I welcome Samantha to give us her presentation. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So as mentioned, I'm Samantha Papasvilu. I was an IMNIS catalyst in 2021. So I had this amazing opportunity to learn a lot more about science and communication and share the amazing experiences I've been able to have in STEM with people from universities and schools. So I'm an early career researcher, and I'm really only been in my career for the last 18 months. I'm still largely finding my feet. So as mentioned, I'm a data analyst and a project manager at the Australian Taxation Office. My role in that space is to really deliver and identify significant and fundamental changes for products and services across the office. And I recently started working as a senior research fellow adjunct at James Cook University up in Townsville, doing some more research on digital project management. And as mentioned, I work at the University of Adelaide teaching. So a little bit about me. I love to travel, but obviously haven't been traveling for quite some time. I love to read. As you can tell, I have a very full bookshelf. And I love to hang out with my small dog army. So I have 3 dogs. My family all have dogs. So I grew up in a regional centre and I went to a small public school in South Australia. And STEM wasn't really an option for me growing up. So we had limited choices, and it really wasn't until later in life when I went to university that I discovered my love of mathematics, data, digital, and digital engineering. So it meant I took a really roundabout way to find my calling. I did a lot of different courses at university. I started and finished a lot. So I've done my honors because I wanted to do research. I did psychological and social sciences because I wanted to understand more about the brain, but I also wanted to understand more about the social sciences and statistics and how we can apply different behavioral analytics models to things. And then from that, I wasn't sure where I wanted to be or what I wanted to do when I grew up. So I went and did my master's. When I finished my master's, I realized that I loved digital and I loved digital technologies and innovation, and I really wanted to do my PhD. I was lucky enough in the year that I was offered my PhD to also be offered a graduate role at the Australian Taxation Office, and they provided me the opportunity to do both. So I was concurrent full-time PhD and full-time employee. So I hold my PhD in digital transformation in public sector services. So I created this framework and technique for supporting industry and public sector services to build their capabilities for digital transformation. And when I was doing it, it didn't feel all that exciting or important, but since COVID and with that rise of Industry 4.0, we've seen that need to understand capability in digital transformation become vital to success. So I sit on the fringe of STEM. I'm not in a traditional science or an engineering role. I sit in that digital and technology and innovation space. So my current focus is on application of digital engineering practices to support transformation efforts, to support innovation. And I've been really fortunate to work with IMNIS and talk about my experience and obtain support and mentoring in supporting my career direction. I haven't faced any significant obstacles or barriers in my career so far. I think I'm still so early on that I still am shocked that I come to speak at these sort of events. I've had a lot of mentors in my time. I find their support and advice just to be completely invaluable. There's nothing better than having a conversation with a mentor and talking through issues. So I've had so many women who have been inspirational to me. So I've had my mom and my current director at the tax office. She's amazing. She makes me feel very supported. She's my biggest advocate. And my PhD supervisor, she was amazing also. She, again, wore many hats of being my biggest advocate and supporter, also my role model. So I think that's really all I have to say about myself. I've been very fortunate so far, and I'm really interested in hearing from the other presenters today.
Thank you very much, Samantha. That's a great introduction, and you presented some very interesting ideas. So I think that's terrific. So I will now move on to Dr. Natasha Hurley Walker. And Natasha has a fantastic title of being an extragalactic radio astronomer. I'm really waiting to find out what that might be at the International Center for Radio Astronomy and Research at Curtin University. Natasha uses novel radio telescopes to explore the universe at some of the longest wavelengths of light. After receiving a PhD in radio astronomy from the University of Cambridge, she moved to Australia to help commission the Murchison Wide Field Array, a precursor instrument to the Square Kilometer Array, which will be the world's largest radio telescope. Her work has revealed the radio glow of our own Milky Way galaxy and ancient cosmic explosions, as well as hundreds of thousands of distant galaxies via radio color surveys, observed across such a wide range of frequencies that the unique spectrum of every object can be used to understand its underlying physics. It sounds fantastic. For her science work in gender equity and outreach activities, she has been named a West Australia Tall Poppies Scientist of the Year in 2017, an ABC Top 5 Scientist in 2018, and a Superstar of STEM in 2019 and 2020. She's head of the Extragalactic Radio Astronomy Group at Curtin University, node of the International Centre of Radio Astronomy Research, and is an Australian Research Council Future Fellow, leading the GLEAM X survey to explore the radio sky in new ways, leading to the recent discovery of a new and unexpected kind of transient periodic radio source. I wonder what that might be. Thank you for being here, Natasha. We're thrilled to have you here, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Marlene. I'll just share my slides and I hope they come through okay. So thanks for that beautiful introduction. I almost feel like I don't need to give the talk now. No. So yes, indeed, I'm a radio astronomer. So as Marlene said, I use radio telescopes to explore the universe. And this is something that I guess my younger self would be extremely happy to know that I'm doing. As a kid, I always wanted to explore the universe. I thought I could do that by getting on a spaceship. It turns out the universe is really big, but that's okay because we can use astronomy to explore it anyway. But my career path wasn't so straightforward, and so I thought it might be interesting for those of you who are in high school to understand a little bit where, you know, someone like me actually comes from. It's not a straightforward stepping stone all the time. So I actually grew up in the UK, and I had some really brilliant science teachers through my career. And actually my biology teacher, Mr. Gibson, he was just incredibly inspiring. He was always challenging us, always making us think. There were questions in the class that, you know, weren't necessarily to do with biology, and then it would make you think, and then it would come back around. He was a really fantastic teacher. My physics teachers, on the other hand, were not particularly inspiring. And so although I had this passion about space and astrophysics, it didn't really have anywhere to go because my teachers weren't really looking after me in that sense. So I actually went to university to do biology, and I had this crazy idea that I could become like a genetic engineer and I could fix climate change because cows produce a lot of methane. So if we could bioengineer the bacteria in their guts, then we could maybe reduce the amount of methane they emit, and then that would be great. And I also kind of thought if I could do that, I could probably make dragons, and that would be amazing. Great dreams of a high school student. So I went to uni to do biology, and I did not click with the subject. So at the time, and I apologize to any aspiring biologists, at the time I found it a little bit too qualitative, a lot of memorization. I had to do a lot of like manual pipetting of things, and I felt like I was very far away from genetically engineering dragons. And I found myself flipping through the course handbook and going, I wonder if I could just nip into an astronomy lecture here and there. Maybe I could fit it in on a Wednesday afternoon, which is not good, right? That's telling me that I am maybe not doing the thing that I would want to do. And you really got to listen to those feelings when you have them, right? You don't know what you've got till it's gone. I didn't realize that I really missed physics. I really missed this kind of way of understanding the world. So you might have something that your experience might be the opposite to mine, but listen to that feeling. So I switched to physics, and I found that that was much more in tune with who I am as a person, my way of thinking, and really helped me understand the world and the universe. And I felt like the skills that I was learning there with mathematics and coding and this kind of problem solving detective work was just really, it was really satisfying for me. And what I love about physics is that you can take something like the plot on the left here, which is a series of pulses received from a very distant source. And you can take just these little tiny bits of information, and by thinking about the problem really carefully, okay, what can produce such regular pulsations? What produces radio waves? What could make them line up in this way? Why are they so close together in time? All of these things, how can they be so bright? You have to come up with theories that then explain your observations. And so in this case, what we're looking at is the radio pulsations of a pulsar, which is a spinning neutron star. And so I really loved that kind of that detective work, and that really kind of led me through my career in physics. So this is my sort of timeline. Now, as I say, it looks like I just went from research project to research project, and I just always knew where I was going. But what's hidden behind this timeline is that every step along the way, I applied for like 10 different opportunities and I didn't get 9 of them. Or in the case of the Future Fellowship, which is where I am now, I didn't know that I would get that, and I was about to exit academia and go into kind of adjacent to academia, sort of supercomputing kind of role. And so this looks very linear. It looks like I just took each opportunity, but behind the scenes, there were a lot of failures, and that is totally normal and fine. One thing I would say though, is I did apply. So in the 2004 thing where I did this summer project, and that actually ended up becoming my final year project at uni, I applied to sort of 5 different summer programs, and I got into 2 of them, and I chose this one. And this was the radio astronomy one, as it turned out. That kind of set my entire career direction, but I did apply for a few different things, like doing some coding for a summer project and a few other things. So it's important to try lots of things, and if you don't really like it, or you've learned something about the way that you think and the way that you work, and that will help you going forward. So failures are a good thing. So just to kind of explain what a physicist actually does. So I did move here to commission a big telescope. This is actually the telescope I worked on for my PhD. I moved to Australia to work on another telescope, which I'll show you in a minute. And yeah, a lot of physics nowadays is coding, because we can't physically do the experiments. We tell computers to do them for us because they're operating on small scales or very quickly or on big scales. But it's the research that really drives me. You find a new problem, try and understand it. Can I do another experiment? Can I do another observation? Can I work out what's going on? And sharing that with colleagues and getting the feedback about what you may or may not have got right. And one thing that I really love about my career is it gives me an opportunity to then pass on my knowledge to other people. And so if you're interested, I've done a nice TED talk on radio astronomy and lots of the discoveries that I've made with the Gleam survey. And you can find that at this link, or you can just type my name into Google and type TED. It'll come up. So I wanted to talk to you about this weird transient that we found, because I think this is a really neat discovery, and I think it kind of encapsulates everything that I do in like one simple video. So I shall show you this. Now, this started as a student project that I ran for an undergraduate in 2020, which was a pretty tough year, and it turned out more exciting than we could possibly have expected. So as I mentioned before, you can have spinning neutron stars with powerful magnetic fields. So these things produce radio waves from their poles, and then they spin. And as the poles rotate over our field of view, we see a radio pulse. And so these things have been known for a long time. They're called pulsars. They were discovered in 1967 by a wonderful woman called Jocelyn Bell Burnell. I encourage you to look up her story if you're interested. And this is our telescope here, the Murchison Wide Field Array. And we see these pulsars a fair number of times. But I found this really strange object that was repeating every 20 minutes. And that's quite unusual. We don't expect to see anything in astronomy that repeats every 20 minutes. So I did a lot of observations, and I did a lot of analysis, and I looked at all of our data, and I formulated theories, and I tested them, and I came up with some theories. So one of the theories is that it's a magnetar, so a source with an even more crazy magnetic field, and another is that it's a special kind of white dwarf called a white dwarf pulsar. And I narrowed out a lot of other options by looking at data and writing theories in order to come down to these particular options. And of course, it could be something that we've never expected to see. and we don't even know what it is. It could be a whole new kind of object in the sky. So now I'm planning on looking for more of them, and some new observations will be starting in a couple of weeks, which will hopefully help us solve this cosmic mystery. So there's a lot online about that. If you Google my name, you can find a lot more about that story. But yeah, that's the kind of thing that I work on, and it is super fun. Now, of course, not everybody, oh, sorry, move on to the next slide. So not everybody who goes and does physics stays in a pure research role. These are like people who were in my cohort when I was doing my PhD and my postdocs, and they span a whole range of different careers. So basically, STEM skills can get you everywhere. We have some of the lowest like unemployment figures in all different kinds of university degrees, and they allow you to do a whole range of different things. So I would recommend, like, physics obviously worked well for me, but whatever kind of STEM career that kind of draws you, how you feel, how your mind works, and how you feel like thinking. And so just those couple of last lessons, you know, think about those values, what you enjoy doing. Try lots of different things. Failure is fine. You have to start somewhere. We all work together best when we pool our skills together. And I've talked a lot about me, but all my work is team efforts. There's always tens of papers on tens of authors on my papers, because we're all working together with different skills. So don't have this idea in your head of scientists as lone geniuses. We work in big teams. Okay, very last quick thing about inspiration. When I was a little kid, Sally Ride, I was living in Texas at the time, and Sally Ride was the first American woman to fly into space. I didn't know about the first female Russian cosmonauts because I was living in Texas, but I found her very inspiring because up to that point I'd only ever seen male astronauts. And so I kind of hope that by putting my story out there, young women who are thinking about a career in astronomy, a career in physics, a career in science, can realize, you know, this is definitely an option for you. And finally, because the theme this year is about sustainability, I just thought I'd mention sustainability and the environment and climate change still lies very close to my heart. And although I didn't go into biology and I didn't solve climate change that way, I'm part of a grassroots movement to try and solve it from an astronomical perspective, Astronomers for Planet Earth. So we can all make a difference, and all our skills are useful. And I hope, if you'd like, you can go and find out more about that as well. So thank you, and I look forward to partaking in the panel discussion and answering your lovely questions. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Natasha. You've blown us away. I think everyone's just catching their breath with that wonderful presentation. And I'd like to remind everyone to please put your questions in the Q&A box as they arise. No question is silly, and we all want to hear from you and make this as interactive as possible. And now I'll move on to our third speaker, Nancy Doe. Welcome, Nancy. Nancy is a senior software developer for Seek Jobs, Australia's #1 employment marketplace. She graduated from RMIT University with a degree in computer science after stumbling upon a coding subject at her previous university course in science. A lucky stumble. Nancy became interested in coding because it uses the logical and creative sides of the brain to create software. She's passionate about giving back to the community, empowering and teaching others how to code. Nancy is a strong advocate and in a growth mindset through pushing the boundaries of your comfort zone. In her spare time, she likes to hike, watch her favorite show, The Office, on repeat, and tries to conquer her fear of heights by bouldering. Wow, welcome, Nancy.
Thank you, Marlene. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Happy International Women's Day. Just like to say I'm incredibly honored to be a part of a panel with such wonderful women. So let me just share my screen. Yep, there we go. So as Marlene mentioned, I'm Nancy, and today I'll be talking to you about how I got into the tech industry and how my journey has been so far. So I've been in the tech industry for 4 years now, and I'm currently a senior software engineer at Seek. If you haven't heard of Seek before, or don't really know what Seek does, SEEK is a company that builds products for the employment marketplace. So we create websites to help people find jobs and career-related information, as well as businesses recruiting the ideal candidate. This is my team here. So I'm currently working in a distributed team with team members that span across Australia and Malaysia. I'm based in Melbourne, and we're working on a product called Draw Employer, which is a website that helps employers find the ideal candidates for their jobs. So let's jump into my journey into tech. Like the wonderful women in this panel as well, mine was also not a straightforward journey. I didn't know immediately after high school that I wanted to, what I wanted to become. I went to an all-girls school, and in my final years of high school, I was still really lost, and I did not know what I wanted to do after I finished high school. At the time, our IT subjects weren't that great. So the first couple of years of learning IT was predominantly learning how to touch type and how to use Excel. Looking back now, they're both very useful skills, but at the time for a high schooler, that sounded incredibly boring. It definitely was not a great insight to what the tech industry is really like. So I completed high school, still completely lost in what I wanted to do. So I enrolled myself in the science degree, as science is really broad, and you can tap into different fields in science. And that's where I discovered coding. I instantly became fascinated with programming. It's such a powerful tool to be able to create something based on lines of code and logic. So I had a light bulb moment, and I was in awe to know that code was all around us. It's in traffic lights, vending machines, it's in your mobile apps, computer, hospital programs, and many more. There's so many fields in tech that you can specialize in, such as artificial intelligence, security, website development, mobile app development, just to name a few. So the possibilities were endless with coding. So after just 6 months in science, I decided to transfer to a computer science degree and graduated at the end of 2017. In my science degree, I immediately identified that, this is a male-dominated course. Sometimes I was the only woman in the classroom. Learning that most of my male classmates had early exposure to coding during high school made me feel that they had a head start. I mean, coming from an all-girls school with not a well-structured IT subject, the introduction to coding was something I wish I had. It would have definitely sparked my passion and interest in coding a lot earlier. Fortunately, I was really lucky during my time at uni to have a very supportive group of friends that made classes less isolating. There were also societies within RMIT. So there's a Switch Society, which is a society for women in information technology, that was also supportive and a safe place for those to learn and grow. After graduating from computer science, I got into a software engineer graduate program at SEEK and have since rolled off the program and remained working at SEEK. So personally, my starting journey into tech was a bit of a confronting experience, if I had to be honest. Although at the time in uni, most of my classmates were predominantly male, I soon came to realize that this was also the case in my workplace as well. A place where I would be spending most of my time. Initially, seeing the lack of women representation in the room made it difficult for me to engage, especially as it was a very unfamiliar and new experience. Imposter syndrome started to kick in. I felt like I didn't belong and that I was an imposter. But as I continued with the grad program, it was made very clear by our mentors and managers that we were there to be a sponge and to grow and to learn as much as we could. So switching my mindset to focus on growing myself and not comparing myself to others really helped, only comparing myself to my past self. So as grads, we were also very well supported. We had multiple support systems with grad mentors. We had buddies in the teams that we were put in. Our managers were great supporters as well as having communities within SEEK, such as Dev Sisters, to guide you as well. So over the years, I've had the opportunity to watch this software graduate program grow. And at the start, this program predominantly attracted male graduates. One of the reasons was that the tone of the ad was written for bros. But once they changed that tone, we saw more women applying. So the hiring process was changed not only to focus on the technical abilities, but also your ability to work in a team, how well you communicate, and how well you can solve a problem. By creating that kind of even playing field for everyone to have an opportunity to shine, that was a great shift we needed to allow more women to enter. So I became more passionate about empowering and encouraging young women into tech. I got lucky to have stumbled upon coding during uni, but for others, they still might not know what coding is or what the tech industry looks like. You know, to me, it's fun, it's challenging. You can be creative whilst solving problems. So computer science in schools, so CS in schools, is a program I had an opportunity to be a part of. It gets people from the tech industry to help teachers teach coding material to high school students. This is something I wish I had when I was younger, as it would have fueled my passion sooner and break that stereotype on what the tech industry really entailed. Not Excel, but yes, we do touch typing. SEEK also runs an event annually called Camp SEEK, where girls and non-binary young people aged 14 to 16 come in on school holidays for a week to get introduced to what it's like to work in the tech industry, learn about the development lifestyle of a product, and also create a product of their own based on current issues from scratch with code or mock-up tools, which is really great to see as well. So just looking back and reflecting on my journey so far and what I've learned, something that I wish I could impart on my younger self is to be curious in what you're passionate about. Don't let stereotypes deter you, and the job market is ever growing with new career pathways as well. You know, because of my curiosity and interest in coding, through work, I was presented with many amazing opportunities. I got to travel to Kuala Lumpur for work, to work with my team members. I also got to work alongside and learn from some very bright and incredible human beings. I also got the opportunity to talk in front of people about what I do and be a part of programs such as CS in schools, helping the next generation learn how to code. My final piece of advice is to get comfortable with uncertainty. See it as an opportunity for you to learn and to grow. You know, having that mindset shift will definitely help you overcome any challenges you face. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nancy. That was terrific and wonderful to see and hear about your experiences at SEEK and how you've established a wonderful career. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So now we're looking forward to some interactive Q&A. There's no questions yet that have been posted, but I have a few up my sleeve, so I will certainly fill the gap. And as we're waiting for everyone to come turn on their videos and come back on, I just wanted to tell you a little bit more about the programs that the Academy of Engineering is running. So STELR, S-T-E-L-R, aims to get secondary school students involved in STEM. And the Shape Your Future webinar series showcases the diverse and dynamic career journeys of especially women in STEM. IMNIS is the industry mentoring network in STEM and is an award-winning industry-led initiative. It connects PhD students and postdoctoral fellows in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics with industry leaders for a one-year mentoring program. And CS in Schools, which I think Nancy mentioned, is a free program to help students get ahead to create industry connections and build pathways in the field of computing and digital technologies. So for the schools that are online, if you'd like to know more, please go on the Academy website as well as the STELR and IMNIS sites, and I'm sure you'll find more. And I see that we've got a question here. But before we launch into the questions, I wanted to ask one question of all three speakers. And this is a question about love. And I wanted to ask you, what do you love most about your job, and how does that empower you? Perhaps Nancy, you were last to speak, so maybe you want to go first?
Sure thing. So what do I love most about my job? I think it's just I'm constantly learning on the job. I'm applying the skills that I learn, and I'm also problem solving, which is something I really enjoy. So these are the things I'm quite passionate about, and this drives me in my career today.
Great, thank you. Natasha?
I think probably the thing that drives me the most is just being able to discover new things about the universe. And of course, I'm learning, but it is quite amazing to think, you know, there's the sum of human knowledge, and I'm just slightly increasing that, just this tiny amount, doing a little bit of good in the world. I feel like, yeah, it's an amazing feeling.
Yeah, yes, empowering. And Samantha, what about you? What do you love most?
About my job, I work with amazing people. I'm really lucky in that regard. I also love that I'm constantly learning, and I'm constantly being challenged by, you know, responding to new disruptions, new technology. Not saying that all disruptions are good, but we're always learning from the changes in the environment. And I love that, you know, we're having to respond quickly in that changing, challenging environment.
Yes, and I think I wanted to add from my side as well, what I love most about my work, and I'm a chemical engineer, is in fact that it's always evolving and changing. And contrary to what people might think, engineering is enormously creative, because you're thinking about new ideas and developing solutions where there have been none before. And so you're always doing something new. And so therefore it's never boring. I find it's always exciting. I have a garage full of papers which I've kept after every interesting project. And I say, oh, I'll keep it because I'll have a look at it next time I need it. But I've never looked at them, because every time, there's no next time, every project is different. But I have to say that after a long career, I haven't lost that love and that passion either. So I think this is the key to a successful career and a fulfilling career and happy life. And I would recommend this to everyone. So now I have a question here. What skill that you use in work have you found the hardest to get your head around? Sam?
I think the interpersonal skills, sometimes we can learn to code, and we can learn to, you know, do those things, but learning those interpersonal relationships has been the hardest for me. And like, you're always learning new skills in that space. So managing stakeholders is different than managing team members. So yeah, I think interpersonal is for me.
Right. Anybody else? Nancy?
Yeah, I had one. I think communication skills. So while studying computer science, they taught us how to code, but they didn't teach us how to communicate well. How do we communicate with our other team members? How do we communicate with our product manager and other stakeholders as well? So I think that's a very important skill that I learned on the job. I'm always improving my communication skills. And yeah, I think that's one of the hardest ones that I've experienced so far.
Yes. Yeah, I think communication is so important. And Natasha talked a little bit about it with her TEDx talks. And I think it really is something that's quite important for people in STEM careers, because people think it's too technical, but the art is really to convert that complexity into words of one syllable, if you like, because it's very important to engage people, the community and your stakeholders in what you're doing to get your message across. Natasha, do you have anything to add on communication?
Well, I would, in terms of skills, I would add, somewhat jokingly, that financial spreadsheets are still completely beyond me. So I manage this $1 million grant, and every so often they send me a spreadsheet, and I go, "It's fine." Whereas I can run a supercomputer, that's fine. But yeah, no, I think more seriously, the working with people, I think that is the tricky thing, and because computers will do what you tell them to do, physics is fairly deterministic, except if you're doing quantum. And yeah, so I'm now managing a research group, and that's been an interesting challenge for me. But of course, you don't have to solve everything from your own field. So just because I'm managing in physics doesn't mean I have to read specific management in physics books. General management books are useful. So I think that aspect of STEM, where you're a lifelong learner, allows you to take on any kind of new challenge. And I think that's great.
Yes, that's great. Now, one of the questions in the Q&A box is about the opportunities and difficulties, if you like, or the challenges of working in a male-dominated environment. I personally actually have never worked with another woman in my entire career. I specialize in process safety, and it doesn't bother me. I'm just used to it. But I was wondering what your views were. Sam?
I work public sector, so we have actually got a large presence of women in the space. It's not 50-50 by any means, but we have a lot of opportunities in our space to grow and develop and work with amazing men and women in this field. A lot of our senior executive in the smarter data and the STEM side of things are women, and they're amazing. They have these amazing histories, and they've done crazy amounts of study, and it's very inspiring. But I haven't really, not yet anyway, thankfully.
I think you've been very fortunate, because you mentioned your current director is a woman as well as your PhD supervisor. So you've really been blessed with those role models, but that's quite rare. But yeah, I agree. Well, what about Natasha? How do you deal with it?
I'm afraid that sort of 10 years ago, I would have given the same answer as Sam, like, oh, this is fine. What's interesting in physics is that we often get it's fairly male dominated as an undergraduate course across the world. But once you get into research in PhD and the first year or so, first 3 years of postdocing, it's usually 50-50. There's a lot of young women, very great astronomers who are in the junior phase of their careers. Unfortunately, this has been true for like 20 years. So it's not a case that this is a recent phenomenon and we're waiting for that to come through. There is an attrition at higher levels. And I mean, I don't want to throw stones, but my current institute, there are 13 permanent male staff and 1 permanent female staff member. That's not the best at all. There are slightly more equal institutes in Australia, but it is a problem. And I think in general, there's a lot of biases that act against women at older career levels. In particular, if you take a break to have a family, this is very difficult. If you don't want to move around the world, that is also very difficult. Particularly, women do tend to be On average, the sort of secondary partner in terms of earning potential, this is just averages, not saying against any one particular person's family dynamics, but that can often mean that when you have very, very small numbers of available positions, it's much less likely that the family will move if it's the woman's job that wants to move them. And so this just all leads to a sort of bias that we call it the scissors plot, basically. The proportion of people in academia, it's all equal early in research, and then as you go up more senior levels, you see more male dominance in the fields. And unfortunately, this applies to a lot of different fields. It's certainly true in physics, but it's also true in things like medicine, which is, surprising because there are so many, it's quite common to see female medics and female doctors now. So there's a lot of things that we can do to break this bias, and talking about it is a great start. And listening to the kind of support that women need. So certainly there were things that I needed when I was returning from mat leave, which I was not given, and I fought very hard to make sure that women after me do receive the kind of support that they need. Yeah, I could talk about on this subject for hours. Just it's a frustrating subject because at any individual interaction, if you say, I notice how there's no female permanent staff members here, people will say, oh, well, that's just, I don't know, I can't explain this. If you say this looks like an instance of sexism, people tend to get defensive. So it is very, very hard to fix this, but we have to keep trying for the sake of young women who want to explore their careers. We are just as deserving of the right to follow our hearts, follow our dreams, and make a difference in this world as any man. And so we should keep working on this.
Yes, thank you, Natasha. And I think today, with the theme of International Women's Day, this is the job for all of us, and especially for women in leadership. I think I've sit on various boards of some very large organizations, and that is my goal. Just as you said, because I have lived through that myself and battled through it, and I want to make it easier for other women. And I think this is the way to change the paradigm. We are very fortunate that we have large numbers of women coming in to STEM careers and being very successful, such as yourselves. And now our goal is to keep you there and promote you so that you do get to the top of your organizations. And we simply can't afford, the world can't afford to lose you, because there's so much work to be done in terms of climate change and so on and so forth. So I think well said, but we will change this paradigm in the future. Nancy, have you got something to add as well? You mentioned several times the fact that you were the only girl in your class. So was I, actually.
Yeah.
But I survived it. So tell us some of your strategies and thoughts.
Yeah, I do want to add, although I was the only female, I had a lot of male counterparts that were friends that were very supportive of me. So that really helped as well. I just wanted to add on what Natasha was saying about bias. Bias is such a tricky thing. You can't even program AI to have unconscious bias. There's models out there that we've tried training to get people through the pipeline, so employ people, pick the right candidates, but even getting that right is hard. So it's even hard for humans to do it. It's even harder for computers to do it. So I think just a lot around bias, having unconscious bias training in your workplace is great. It makes it transparent on what the expectation is of you. So yeah, I just wanted to call that out. But
I'd just add one quick thing on this as well, something that's been shown time and time again. If you blind CVs, so if you take identical CVs and you put a name at the top that's male, or you put a name at the top that's female, you'll see staggeringly different offer rates for interviews. We have a similar problem in astronomy. People apply for time on telescopes. If you have a male name at the top, often they're more successful. And there have been moves, especially in big consortia like Hubble, big space telescope, to blind that process, and that results in the gender fraction mirroring the applicant pool. So if you take the names off, people are assessed on their scientific merit, and then there's no gender bias. So there's actual concrete things we can do. I'm not a sociologist, but there are enormous lists online that organizations can take to fix these biases, and so that's what we should be doing.
Yeah, I wanted to point out that what Natasha says is true, but it's not just limited to science and STEM, but also in music. For example, the world's orchestras were dominated by men, and the excuse given was that women make a different sound. So they started to audition blind and without shoes, because the shoes could tell whether it was female or male. And voila, we have 50% in orchestras. So this again, is a bias that we need to address. But Nancy also raised a very important point in terms of AI and computing. As this dominates our lives and as digital transformation comes into the fore, we absolutely need more women there to address this gender bias and to make sure that the machines that are going to control us are not male dominated. This is a very important role for us as women. We need to transform that technology so that it works for us and it works for everyone. So this is a very important role, Nancy, that you have. And I'm so pleased that you're there, and we need hundreds and thousands more of you doing that job. So I'm going to move very quickly to one more question that's pouring in. And so I'll ask this question. What's one of the most interesting facts or skills that you've learned when you were studying? This is in the science area, science, technology, or engineering or mathematics area. Samantha, you didn't study science, but you can answer the question as well as anybody else. It doesn't have to be a fact, but it could be a skill. It could be a skill.
I think the coding skill was something that I was not expecting to enjoy to learn to do. There's lots of different languages and everything. So as a skill, coding was something. I can't think of any interesting facts off the top of my head.
Yes. Anyone else? Nancy?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think back in my uni days. I took a subject in artificial intelligence. I think that was one of my most interesting subjects, because I was just in awe about, you're training an agent to act a certain way. So in our course, we were supposed to program the Pac-Man game. So you're supposed to program the Pac-Man to try and beat the game, avoiding the ghosts and everything. So that experience for me was fascinating, because I didn't have to have a hands-on approach of telling the Pac-Man to go here and go here and go here. They worked that out themselves. So I think just that space is really interesting, and it's exciting to watch AI grow and evolve into something very useful and powerful.
Yes, and I think the power of AI is going to be something that we're just at the start of, and we're just starting to imagine. I think, Natasha, you wanted to type something on the computer languages. Did you want to answer the question?
I'll answer that online, but I'll talk about the thing that I learned. And I mentioned just offhandedly at the beginning that I wanted to explore space when I was a kid, and I did read a lot of science fiction. I watched a lot of Star Trek, and I think that our general culture has an idea that we're going to go and colonize other planets like in the next 100 years. And becoming an astronomer, doing an undergraduate degree, reading a lot, I realized how incredibly divorced from reality that vision is. Just so orders of magnitude difference in technological ability that we would need to get a foothold on a place like Mars. We need to really, really, really cherish our own planet. Like, it is probably unique in the universe in its location and the stability of our star and our position in the galaxy. We are quite likely the only technological civilization around in our galaxy at the moment, and it's an incredible responsibility that at the moment we're shirking by treating the planet the way that we do. And there is absolutely no planet B. So we're not going anywhere. and we really need to figure out how to keep the planet that we do have. So that's the thing that I learned that did make me slightly regret going into astronomy, because I feel a little bit powerless to do anything about it. But as I say, there are grassroots networks and we can all do our bit. So yeah, leave you with that.
It's well said. There is no planet B, and really it is such a perfect positioning. You know, it really is beautiful. I want to ask one more question, a quick answer, please. Who or what inspires you? Perhaps Nancy first?
That's a hard one. What inspires me? So definitely my mentors. So during my time at SEEK, I've had a couple of mentors. They're an amazing inspiration for me, watching how powerful they are in a room, controlling the room, but also being very empathetic as well to team members. I think they're the greatest inspiration to me, and also the younger generation. Being able to teach coding during schools, seeing the ideas that the students have, it's amazing, and I can't wait to see, you know, what they do, the next generation.
Yeah, great, thank you. Samantha? Who or what inspires you?
My family inspires me a lot. I come from a very diverse background and I've done very different things, and they're always very supportive. So I definitely say my family is my inspiration to keep doing stuff.
Yeah, and that's a great source of support, no matter where you are and whatever your career trajectory is. So yeah, and Natasha, I think you have given us an insight into your universe, but tell us what inspires you.
I mean, as a kid, like I say, a lot of science fiction, but yeah, nowadays, people who are unafraid to say what they really think, and you know, even if it's contra to what the mainstream sort of culture is pushing. You know, people who will say, actually, we need to degrow our economies. Actually, we need to take climate action. You have people like Greta Thunberg. I just kind of wish that I'd gone on school strike when I was 16. You know, maybe the world would be a different place. So yeah, I guess activists really inspire me, and that's a place I'm sort of leaning towards as I get older. I feel like we have a responsibility. If we have the knowledge, then we should speak out.
And do you think that women, especially in STEM, are more outspoken in this area? More willing to break the rules and speak out? Or break ranks and speak out?
Again, I'm not a sociologist, but I do know that if you look at the way that the coronavirus pandemic has been handled by countries across the world, those with female leaders did exceptionally well. I think women are better equipped, perhaps, in the way that we're raised and nurtured, or maybe it is something to do with a lower level of testosterone, but those female leaders did an exceptional job. Now, of course, if there's a male-dominated field and there's a woman in the room, you know she is just incredible, because she had to be amazing to get to where she is. So that could be an effect as well. But nevertheless, I think, yeah, it is time for women to step up. I feel like, hey, men have had control of the world for a good 40,000 years. It's not gone great. Let us have a turn.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly, and I think all three of you, being in male-dominated careers, are all incredible. You know, I think that we've been just blown away with what you've had to say today. Now, to those schools who are online, I wanted to let you know that I hope you've enjoyed this session as much as we have, and that there'll be a survey sent out to you on your thoughts on this panel discussion and what you thought of the event. So we'd really appreciate you filling that out. And finally, I want everyone to join me in thanking our wonderful presenters. You've all been so inspiring. I've really learned a lot and really enjoyed it. My name is Marlene Kanga. I didn't introduce myself at the start, chemical engineer. I'm the immediate past president of the World Federation of Engineering Organizations, 100 nations, 30 million engineers, nearly all men. I'm the second woman to be president. I'm also the past national president of Engineers Australia, again, second woman to be elected. So I've also been the only woman in the room and know what you've been through. So thank you very much to all of you for participating in this session. I hope you all have a wonderful International Women's Day, and I hope all the schools online have got something out of it, and you can go back and listen to the recording. And yes, please, I think Natasha has given us a link to her website, so you can go online and look at nhurleywalker.com, or follow her on Twitter at Colorful Cosmos. And we look forward to finding out more about that pulsating star, or whatever that you said.
Me too.
It sounds fascinating, and I hope they name it after you as well. It would be terrific to have a Natasha up there. So with all that, we'll thank you everyone, and we'll close the session right at the top of the hour. Thank you very much.
Thanks all.
Bye.